All right, we are recording. So hello everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I'm going to actually let Matt kick it off because he's more of the brains behind this operation. So go ahead, Matt. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, first off, I want to thank James for coming and hosting another speaker series with us again. This is James' third or fourth time coming and helping out. You were the first one to come in and host this series and really kind of kicked it off. So I do want to give that just moment of gratitude to you, because it opened doors to have other people come in, follow, and find new ways of providing resources and services, really of knowledge to our veterans from the community, not just on campus, but kind of blending the two together to make sure our students have access to everything, not only when they're transitioning to the academic world as a student, but they're going to be veterans for the rest of their lives. So to make sure that they're aware of what is available to them. So for this session today is going to be with Legal Aid of Broward County, hosted by James Heaton. We're going to ask for anybody, if you have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat box throughout the meeting, and we'll actually answer them at the end. And if you could, try to refrain from adding too many personal details, because we are recording this session and we'd like to share the information that James is going to provide to us today to our online and regional campuses through our YouTube channel. So if anything a little bit too personal is added, we will go back and edit out, but it just makes the whole process a lot more seamless if we hold the questions at the end, and then we can kind of vet through and try to avoid adding too much information. So without further ado, James Heaton from Legal Aid of Broward County.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for spending your evening with us here to learn more about whatever it is I'm going to be talking about today, right? So I really wanted to focus this presentation on some of the more recent and timely aspects of what we're going through with the COVID-19 pandemic, and some changes that might apply to you guys. I also wanted to, as always, keep this open to questions. I'm not going to be able to provide any specific legal advice to anybody, though I will be sharing information about how to obtain free legal services if you're eligible, and how to obtain other services as well, which are available to veterans here in Broward County, and which may be very helpful. As you can imagine right now, there's a lot of resources out there that are convening, not just to help veterans, but to help anyone who is facing hardships based on COVID-19 and based on certain experiences that are unique to this. So I'm going to try and be brief on this, because the thing I like most about these presentations and these talks, sorry if you hear some dog barking in the background, is the questions that come from you guys. So as Matt said, put the questions in the chat box whenever, and we'll get to them as they come up, or save your questions to the end where you'll be able to ask them, and I'll do my best to answer them. Also, keep your personal information limited as we're recording this. So the first thing I want to talk about with this is that people are having a lot of questions. That what we're seeing are a lot of questions based on what are our obligations as tenants, what are my obligations as a consumer, what relief do I have, what are some of the programs that are accessible to me, and whatnot. And I'm going to try not to get super boring with this, and I still want to get to some of the VA specific stuff. So really, in a nutshell, one of the main things that's coming out of this, the biggest legal slowdown that we're seeing, is the statewide closures of most court operations. And what does that mean for you and I? Is it means that they're not pursuing evictions and they're not pursuing foreclosures at this time. What that doesn't mean is it doesn't mean that you don't have to pay your rent, and it doesn't mean that you don't have to pay your mortgage. But what it means is that you will not be evicted and you will not be foreclosed. And if you were already going through the foreclosure process, your home will not be sold at auction, at least deadline, which currently in Broward County, at least, the end of May 29th. And I believe Miami-Dade has followed suit as well. So May 29th is essentially cancellation of all non-emergency hearings Now, when I say that, be mindful that if you have a case going on right now in the court and you get a notice of hearing or you had a scheduled hearing before, it may still be going forward remotely through Zoom. So check with the clerk of courts, check with your attorney if you're represented about that. Now, going back to the question of do I have to pay my rent? The answer is clearly yes. But if you can afford your rent, there's so many programs out there right now, and a lot of resources that are convening based on specific situations. So, for example, the United Way of Broward County and 211 are working to leverage resources to help veterans that are unable to pay their rent. Supportive Services for Veteran Families, which is a VA-backed program, has expanded their eligibility criteria to help veterans and their families who are unable to pay their rent catch up. Because what we're afraid of is that we're going to see people that went into this crisis, this financial crisis, already owing a month of rent, and coming out 2 or 3 months later now owing 3 or 4 months of rent. And what's going to happen when the courts reopen? Your guess is as good as mine, but if I was a betting man, I would say that all those landlords are going to start the eviction process. So while they can't file evictions now, there's no prohibition about them moving forward with evictions once the courts reopen. There are some additional safety nets as provided by the Housing and Urban Development HUD, and that applies to tenants that are living in Section 8 housing, obviously, or public housing. But it also applies if you live in an apartment complex and that apartment complex was built or was mortgaged with federal mortgage, federal dollars, which you may not know. Or if you're renting a private residence and your landlord has a federal mortgage, meaning if your landlord has a VA home loan and you're living in that house, you have additional protections provided to you that will prevent immediate evictions, and it'll also extend dates, what they're calling the moratorium for filing these evictions, further than what we're expecting right now for court reopening at the end of May. So that's something that we can talk offline about. If you have specific questions about it, I'm happy to answer those questions one-on-one about those specific situations. I don't think this will be the right platform for it, but I'm going to give you my email address at the end of this so that you guys can shoot me an email if you have any questions about the specifics in your case about whether you're protected right now from these certain evictions. Now, one of the big issues that we're seeing as well is that all applies to eviction for non-payment of rent. But what we're seeing is landlords getting creative, if you will, on telling their tenants, hey, I get it, you didn't pay your rent, you're behind 3 months, and I can't evict you, but I'm going to shut off your utilities, or I'm going to shut off your water, your electricity, or I'm going to change the locks on the door, and you can't do anything about that, can you? Well, the problem with that is that landlords cannot shut off your utilities. They can't change their locks. These are called prohibitive practices under the state law, under the Florida law. And it's one of the only few protections that tenants really have when it comes to fighting against your landlord, and protections that really work. If the conditions of your rented property aren't the best, there's not a whole lot you can do to force the landlord to change. But if the landlord comes in and changes your locks, or disconnects your electricity, or disconnects your water, even one instance of that, they're liable or can be liable for 3 times the amount of rent. So if you're paying $1,500 in rent every month and your landlord decides to be a jerk about it and say, hey, you're behind a month, you pay or I'm going to shut off your water, and they disconnect the water from you, you can sue them for $4,500. And they have to turn the water back on, obviously. So it's one of the best protections. Don't let your landlords bully you if you fall behind or if you have questions. Better than falling behind is working with your landlord. You'd be surprised how many landlords are compassionate, even if they've been less compassionate in the past. We're finding that by working with landlords, we're able to resolve these issues without them being legal disputes. However, Also, if any of this happens to you, these prohibitive practices, if you have conditions issues, or if you just have general questions about this stuff, again, I'm going to give you my email address at the end of this, so you can just shoot me an email. Now, one of the other things I want to talk about are some of the expansions for the Coronavirus Response Act, or the CARES. Now, a lot of this may not apply to you. If you're receiving VA benefits, service-connected disability, VA pension, VOC rehab, or GI Bill, for the most part, and I believe if you're going to Nova Southeastern University, for the most part, your benefits should continue as long as your classes have been moved to offline. Now, the only issues that we've been seeing with the GI Bill is when a school cancels a class and doesn't provide an alternative. We're seeing this a lot in vocational trades, where veterans receiving VOC or GI Bill dollars for a trade. Their trade requires them to go into a mechanic shop 30 hours a week, whatever it might be, 20 hours a week. However, that shop is closed and nothing's going on there. They're not allowed in there and there's no alternative. Well, the VA has said that those GI Bill dollars cannot be paid. They'll only pay the GI Bill dollars up to the last date of attendance. So the rule of thumb is, as long as your class can still go forward online, the GI Bill, your post 9/11 GI Bill dollars should still be coming in. Also, your housing allowance should not be affected for those same purposes, as long as your class was once in person and is moved to online because of this COVID-19. Now, if your school shuts down, if your classes get completely canceled, or something else happens where your classes are not continuing, you may have a different scenario and your benefits may be cut. By May, they probably will be. If that happens to anyone here, again, you'll have my email address. Let me know. I don't want to see anyone get completely screwed by that. And the VA is offering some assistance right now for financial debts that occur due to these reasons. None of it is really getting you out of the debt completely, but they can be useful to you if those situations come up. So let's talk a little bit about the CARES Act. One of the biggest aspects of the CARES Act is something that most of you should have already been reaping the rewards of, and that is what they call the cash payments of the stimulus. What it really is, it's a tax credit, a prepaid tax credit, not to be confused with a deduction or anything else that's not a tax credit. So what tax credits are is it essentially allows a payment of a certain amount to be deducted from your tax liability. And what they did was they're rolling this into your 2020 taxes, which will be filed in 2021. It won't affect anybody at all. By getting this $1,200, you won't have to pay $1,200 back. In fact, it's actually very beneficial for you to receive this money, and it's something that's happened in the past as well. Back in the earlier 2008 or 2009, I believe, when they did the last stimulus check, where folks received a stimulus check, it was the same platform, and there were no issues there. So really, the eligibility for this, $75,000 or less of adjusted gross income for single filers, or $150,000 for couples filing jointly. You should get $1,200 individually, $2,400 as a married couple filing jointly. Additionally, $500 per child, up to, I think the limit that they put on was $3,400 for a family of 4. So you should have already received that. That's excellent. If you have, if not, let me know. The VA got on board as well with what Social Security was doing, saying that if you weren't getting any employment income and you had no reason to file taxes, if you were only getting Social Security benefits, you didn't have to do anything. They were going to get you your check or your direct deposit. The VA jumped on board and said, yeah, we're going to do the same thing. If you're only getting VA compensation or VA pension benefits and no other benefits, we are going to make sure that you get your stimulus check. So if you haven't gotten it already, check the IRS website, use their tool there. I can provide that link if anyone needs it. Just yell in the chat box and I'll get the link and I'll post it. So if you haven't gotten your check yet, you should be getting it in that sense, but it's always good to check to make sure there's not a holdup For example, Matt and I were talking before this that there are some situations, and I've got a good friend of mine who was supposed to get his check, didn't get it. He's been filing tax returns. He works for retail, filing tax returns his entire life, getting refunds. He checked on the IRS tool, and they said, we don't have your banking information on file. And, he's had the same bank account for the past 20 years and been doing direct deposit and everything with no changes. So there are some mishaps that are happening there. So it's always good to know. The other major thing that's changing rapidly right now is the unemployment, or what Florida calls a reemployment assistance. So under Florida currently, and don't kill me if I'm off by a day or two here, but under Florida currently, you can receive up to $275 per week for unemployment assistance, and that is received. You can receive up to $3,300 every year for unemployment assistance for those who are eligible. Now, usually unemployment assistance requires proof that you're looking for employment at whatever the required clip is. However, they've currently suspended that. So if anyone is out of a job and they've applied for unemployment assistance, they should be receiving that soon. I understand that there has been some issues with logging on to the website and issues with applying for unemployment assistance. But at least for the Florida portion of it, there shouldn't be any downtime for receiving those benefits. So Florida's waived the one week delay in receiving benefits. And from my understanding, from the last I heard, if you've applied for benefits and you have to wait any period of time, you'll get those benefits retroactively applied. Now, what the CARES Act expanded, and this is now just starting in Florida, it adds an additional $600 per week in addition to whatever the base amount that you're receiving from the state. Now, the importance of that is twofold. One is that's a very decent amount of money that you'll be receiving through unemployment assistance. However, you have to keep in mind that the base amount for unemployment assistance expires at $3,300 total. So if you've been receiving unemployment assistance before this crisis, it's likely that those dollars will run out. However, from what I've been told so far by the Department of Economic Opportunity in Florida, is that $600 per week from the CARES Act should continue on as long as you remain eligible through the end of July. Now, if you have specific questions about that, again, and same with any of this stuff that goes on, let me know. Something that probably doesn't apply to most of you, student loan relief, at least not yet. One day you'll come to my world of crippling student loan debt, but until then, or hopefully not, until then, there's for federal loans, there's been a moratorium on collecting those amounts of money, which is useful for several reasons, and it's better than just a deferment. So what the government did is they said, okay, well, what the plan is that if you owe student loan debt right now, you don't have to pay it. Use your money to pay your rent, to do something else. You don't have to pay your student loans. Additionally, what we're going to do is we're going to suspend interest at this time, which is wonderful. And also, if you're in one of these repayment plans, such as a public service loan forgiveness or a income-based repayment plan, where you have forgiveness after 10 years or 20 years, we're going to count each of these payments you miss as a qualifying payment. It's wonderful, amazing, and a great thing that they're doing right now. So these are a couple of these programs that are going in. I'm going to take a second here to answer some of the questions that were asked publicly. Thank you, Matt, for sharing my email address. So one of the questions here is not receiving unemployment. So right now, the best thing to do is, I'm going to share the link right now. Let me pull it up. So the website for unemployment is floridajobs.org. And I think that is going to be the best resource. It's the Department of Economic Opportunity, and through that, it should have everything you need in order to get the benefits that you're looking for. If you've already applied, you should be able to log on to the dashboard and get more information. So you log on to the program's called Connect. Log on, you can check your status there, and it'll tell you if they still need anything from you. Now, you're still going to be required to provide any documents that they ask for. So it's important to make sure you get all of that in as well if you've already applied. Let me see here. So the question about owing rent, yes, if you have rent due, it's going to become due later. Rent that's due now, if you're a month behind on rent, you're eventually going to have to pay that. There's no rent forgiveness going on right now. You're going to have to pay the rent eventually. Ultimately, it's between you and your landlord about how that gets paid, but it's going to have to get paid, and it is grounds for eviction if you fail to make that rent payment. With mortgages, it's a little more tricky because mortgage companies offer forbearances, and those can be very, very dangerous. If you have a VA home loan, which I hope most of you do, you're in a much better position. If you're having issues with your VA home loan, I definitely suggest that you reach out to the home loan guarantor office because they're going to be the main source for who you can talk to about all of the programs that are available to help you out on your mortgage. The problem with traditional forbearance with a mortgage is that the bill becomes due very quickly. So some mortgage companies allow you to issue let's call it a 3-month forbearance on your mortgage. So let's say you owe $1,000 a month for your mortgage. They'll let you skip 3 months of payments, but they won't wrap that up into the end of your loan. What they'll do is on month 4, now you owe $4,000. You owe your $1,000 payment plus the $3,000 that you put off. So be very careful about that and make sure that if you are looking into that as an option, that you understand what you're doing. Now, that's traditional forbearance. These days, there are other programs available due to COVID-19 that are changing those rules for forbearance and making them more like a traditional loan modification, which wraps those payments into the back of your loan. So just be mindful of what you're actually getting yourself into. Reach out to the VA home loan office if you have issues about paying your home loan if you're under a VA home loan. But yes, there are some additional protections for VA home loan holders. However, there's nothing that says you don't have to pay your mortgage. There's nothing that says you don't have to pay your rent unless there's some type of actual agreement in place. So be careful about that. One of the other things, let's see here. Get some good stuff for you. So as of right now, too, all of the VA healthcare facilities are open. However, they are suggesting that veterans contact their provider prior to showing up for an appointment. If you don't feel comfortable, if you have a pre-existing condition, if you have some sort of immunocompromised issue where you don't want to be in public, call and make sure that you reschedule your appointment or move to telehealth if possible. They don't want you getting exposed, and they don't want you risking yourself and your health if not necessary. However, I do understand that there are times where you need to go to a doctor's appointment or you need to go to the emergency room. Those are going to remain open at this time. Additionally, if you have a claim filed for benefits especially for service-connected disability, they are continuing still with compensation and pension exams. And those CMP exams are a crucial part of your case, and they should not be taken lightly, and it should not be something that you miss. However, if you do have to miss it, I strongly suggest that you reschedule it prior to the appointment, and you don't wait till the appointment to come and go and then call and say, oh, well, I missed it because of COVID-19. The VA is more likely to give you a hard time in that latter circumstance. And they're more likely to work with you early on in the process to reschedule it than they are to give you the what they call the good cause argument to reinstate a C&P exam. Now, under VA guidance right now, they are issuing and allowing those good cause arguments for COVID-19 related reasons. And that is both for rescheduling compensation and pension exams. It's for missing filing deadlines. It's for missing deadlines for appeals. They're allowing you to file a later appeal or later whatever it is that you're doing after the deadline, as long as you file it with a good cause. And always, with my experience as doing this stuff, it never is the good side to be on. You don't want to be on the side of asking the VA to allow you to extend your claim. You want to be on the side of getting the claim in on time. So if you can, great. If you cannot, and you actually have a reason why, if you're hospitalized, if you're quarantined, if you're taking care of a sick relative, if you had a real reason that is related to COVID-19, you should be okay. But otherwise, the VA is, there's no requirement for them to accept your good cause as for an extension of their deadlines. So like I said, it's just important, and I see some questions coming up here as well, which I'll get to in just a moment. But it's important to keep your deadlines with the VA, but know that you have some safety net, if you will, if you miss a deadline for the reason of COVID-19. Now, I want to also talk about, and I don't think it would probably apply to a lot of people here, but non-service connected pension and certain things, Medicaid-like benefits, and SSI, which is supplemental security income, not to be confused with Social Security disability insurance or with Social Security retirement. But SSI and VA pension are benefits that are based on being a low-income individual. With VA pension, it's a low-income disabled wartime veteran who's over the age of 65, who's suffering from non-service connected disabilities that prevents them from working, or like I said, over the age of 65. That's a means tested benefit, meaning that if you get any additional income, it all has to be reported. Now, if you are a VA pension recipient, not service connected disability, VA pension, and you get a stimulus check, you don't have to worry about it. As long as that money is spent within a year, it won't trigger any issues with that benefit. If that sounds like it's something that applies to you, let me know. I doubt any of the 10 other people on this phone call are going to be in that situation. But if you are, reach out to me through email or a private message on this and let me know. Does anyone have any specific questions now before I go forward? Let me go ahead and get back to this chat box here and see what's going on. So Matt, that's a good question about whether there's been any COVID-related benefits from the CARES Act for those called up on orders. I'm not exactly sure. I have been a bit out of the loop on active duty service member benefits at this time, but it's something I'll definitely look into, and I'll follow up with you about anyone who's been activated. I'm guessing that, or I'm hoping that there is some sort of relief for those folks that are being called up. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna get to Angie with that question in 1 second. All right, and so I'm going to answer the other question first. All right, so there's 3 things here. One of them was waiting for 3 C&P exams due to COVID-19 for the VA. Yeah, they're going to make you wait. Just make sure you make those appointments once you're scheduled. I can't express enough, and I don't work for the VA. When in fact, we actually go against the VA quite often. I can't express enough how important a C&P exam can be for your claim. And at those exams, just be as honest as you can. People have good days, people have bad days, but they're just as far as it comes to their disabilities, go in there and just be honest with the examiner, and understand that it's not a medical examination as far as you're not getting a CAT scan at a C&P exam. It's a questionnaire that they're filling out. Now, regarding a claim that was filed in 2011. And was closed and then reopened and rated. Now, maybe. The answer is maybe. what has to have happened is back in 2011, there had to have been all of the evidence that they granted your current claim on right now. So what that means is if back in 2011, all of the medical evidence existed, stating that you had X disability and it should have been rated at Y, then you might have a claim for what's called a clear and unmistakable error. If, say in 2011, they asked you, and I'll keep using C&P exams here. In 2011, they asked you to come to a C&P exam, but you didn't, and then they adjudicated your case, and then in 2016 you refiled. They reopened your case, they scheduled another C&P, you went to it, and they granted it based on that C&P, then you are not getting additional back pay there for the most part, absent some other issue. Only because what the VA would have said is you had the opportunity to appeal that, and the case was regularly adjudicated without an appeal. So therefore, you lost that route. And if you would have appealed it, maybe you would have won it on the appeal. So if you have a specific question about that, shoot me an email at that email address about your case, and we can talk offline in more detail about it. Now, permanently disabled, should I apply for sub? What is the specific benefit you're asking for? Is Social Security? So if you're essentially, and this is actually a good topic to talk about, if you're considered permanently disabled, there's a couple designations through the VA was what they determine as permanently disabled. So if you're totally and permanently disabled with individual unemployability, a TDIU as they call it, what that is TDIU is a benefit that pays you at a higher rate, pays you at 100% if you are service connected with either a 60% service connection or 240% with, sorry, I'm reading the question again. With two disabilities that also prevent you from working. Those have to be service-connected disabilities. Now, with those, you can apply and they'll pay you at the 100% rate. It's something that should definitely be carefully considered, because if you do receive that benefit, you cannot work. And if you do return to work, they can lower your benefits back to the actual rated combined rating rate. If you are considered to be work, the VA to be beneficial Social Security disability insurance. SSDI is a similar benefit to individual unemployability, where they pay you at a rate equal to what your current Social Security retirement would be, and that is if you have disabilities that prevent you from working altogether. Now, both those benefits are the very generalization about those benefits, and I'm happy to have another presentation about VA benefits and the specifics on service-connected disability and Social Security disability next time, or talk to anyone here offline more specifically about it or provide you with additional information. But yeah, if you want to go ahead and clarify your question, what was the question about applying for a sub? I'm sorry, I didn't understand it. So if you want to go ahead and retype that question, I'll definitely get back to it. So the some of the issues here that we are, it's really the big things for us have been exactly that. One of the things too, and it's something I'm a big advocate about, is estate planning. With estate planning, it's something now that's very important, because one of the biggest aspects for estate planning that apply to most of you and most of our clients is the living documents, what we call the advanced directives. And those are documents that allow you to choose who has certain rights and responsibilities and powers over decision-making over your life when you're unable to make those decisions. So those are the designation of healthcare surrogate or healthcare proxy, the living will. Those are two very important documents. Also, if you have children, there's a document that you can complete called the designation of pre-need guardian of a minor child, which would say if something were to happen to you, either incapacity or death, and you have minor children, you can list who you want to be responsible for those children, assuming that they consent to that designation as well. So those are important documents that we traditionally work on. The VA can also help you with the first two. The VA, through their social workers, they have the forms that are really good for the VA. I suggest that you also have the state approved forms as well. And again, if anyone here needs some assistance with that, shoot me an email. It's a little more difficult during these times for us to do it. So we're working right now with some of our private attorneys to figure out the best way to reach out to folks that need estate planning, because most of these documents require a notary. And currently, under the state of Florida, they do allow electronic notaries for some estate planning documents. However, it's a rather expensive service and is fairly difficult to handle. So the process for going about that is something that we're still working with. For a last will and testament, the state of Florida does not allow a electronic notary at this time, at least not until 1 July of this year, when that law will go into effect. So no one really knows how that's going to be handled yet. So if you're doing some estate planning, let me know. We're currently trying to find the best way to do it, but we haven't found it yet, because in-person estate planning has been the best tool so far. So if a service-connected disability percentage is assigned and over time it gets worse, can you request a reevaluation? Yes, absolutely. So one of the things, a service-connected disability benefit for the most part is fluid. And I say for the most part because there are some exceptions, but for the most part it's fluid. So let's say you get your service-connected disability claim, you got it granted in 2010, and it's for your right shoulder, we'll say. And that was back in 2010. And back in 2010, you can move your shoulder like this. You get a little range of motion, but not a whole lot of it. Well, now we're in 2020, and your range of motion has changed. It's limited. You have more issues with it. Your condition has worsened. Can you apply for an increase? The answer is you can. Now, I always ask my clients this prior to allowing them to apply for an increase. I say, ask yourself this: has your condition gotten worse? If the answer is yes, would a medical professional agree with you that your condition gotten worse? Would your doctor agree with you? And if your answer is, well, I don't have a doctor right now, you should not apply for an increase, because this is what happens. You apply for the increase, and you're able to either submit medical evidence, or if all of your medical evidence exists at the VA, you don't have to submit anything. The VA will get it for you. And what they're going to do is they're going to look through your medical history, your recent medical history, and really the medical history between when they last rated you and now, and determine are the medical records sufficient to warrant an increase? Should we keep the rating the same, or should we propose a decrease in rating? So what tends to happen is, especially for physical disabilities, back conditions are very common for this to happen to, is when you got rated, you were going to the doctor a lot because you were going through C&P exams, you're going through treatment, you're going through whatnot, and it gets to a point, especially with physical disabilities, that becomes pain management. And it becomes, hey, you can do this at home. Instead of coming into the outpatient clinic, 3 or 4 times a month, why don't you just do physical therapy at home? Do some stretching, do some calisthenics, do some yoga or whatever they tell you to do, and just report back if you need anything else. So what tends to happen is you were rated at 50% for your back. At the time, you were going to the VA clinic 4 times a month for physical therapy. You said, I don't want to drive this much, so you decide to stop doing that. And now you want to put in an increase for your back because you need more money. You put in that increase, the VA takes a look at your records. They say, hey, I don't see any warrant for an increase. There hasn't been a change in the disability here. In fact, it looks like you stopped going to the doctor. You used to go 4 times a month. Now you go once every 6 months. What happened here? They're going to propose a decrease there in most situations. So it's always good to be careful prior to putting in an increase for benefits, and just ask your medical professional. It's always good to keep that conversation with your doctor. And the way I suggest that you go about it is not going to your doctor and saying, Doc, I want to put in an increase for my service-connected disability rating. Can you help me out? Saying something more like, hey, Doc, I think my back condition has gotten worse. What's your opinion on this? And if your doctor says, yeah, well, looking at the medical records, it looks like it's definitely gotten worse over the past few years. You might feel more comfortable putting in a claim. Oh, this is a good one. All right, so it is an issue, and it's something that has come up on advocates across the country, is the VA removing the DBQs from their website and putting on that fun little language that says, we're trying to prevent fraud in the future. I have a feeling that one of two things is going to happen. One is that they're going to get sued, and two is that they're going to get sued. So it's probably, they're going to just put it back up. So the DBQs are still available on the VA website. They are not available where they used to be on that front-facing side. If you give me a second, I can probably find a link to where the DBQs still are, because this is something we were just talking about. So for those who don't know, a DBQ is a disability benefits questionnaire. It's what's used during the CMP exam process. And what they do, here it is. So what they do is essentially the examiner who is looking, who's evaluating you for the specific disability, uses that DBQ. One of the issues that we may start seeing too is, so with the VA, let me just double check this link to make sure it's still active. So with the VA, one of our concerns right now as advocates is that they have removed that front-facing, DBQ list, and there are some other sites up, but our concern is that they update the forms without the knowledge. So let me see. Give me a second and I will. And there's a whole trail of the rationale why they did it. Apparently there's an Office of Inspector General report stating that there was some fraud and whatnot. So there's two things right now that you can do. If you're working with an attorney, and any attorney that you should be working with should have VA access internally, or any attorney or even a VSO should have access to the VA intranet site. And on the internal VA websites, the DBQs are still there. Additionally, there are some of them currently archived at that one. I'm going to pull them up. There's some archived currently, but like I said, my concern before was that they go in and update these forms without the knowledge of anyone keeping these archives. But let me get those to you right now. They have the most recent DBQs. So yeah, it is a big issue though, that the yeah, and that's what, welcome to the world of the VA, which I'm sure most of you have been experiencing already, the inconsistencies of the logic. So we got this one. So yeah, that's why I'm expecting that they are going to. Apparently, this was it's a hasty decision by the VA. Oops, sorry, I sent that one just to one person. Send that to everybody. So that link will get you to one of them. And this was a recently updated one. But yeah, the DBQs are an excellent tool to understand and to feel more comfortable about what you're going to be asked during the CMP exam. I personally, for all of my clients that are going through CMPs, offer the opportunity to review a disability benefits questionnaire about their condition, with the caveat that the examiner is not likely to give you a rundown of every question one by one, but to ask you general questions so that they can answer the questionnaire as completely as possible. Also, let me see, because I thought that there was another better website as well for the DBQs. In the meantime, that one should be good. But like I said, if you're working with an attorney or a VSO, they should be able to to get you prepared with the DBQ. So I'm not familiar with the Roger STEM scholarship. So I can't answer that question. I apologize for that. I think, at least in my experience, talking with your school's academic advisor or your school's the financial aid department, they usually have someone there who's pretty well versed on the scholarships, understanding that right now things might be a little more difficult to access than they are normally. All right. Does anyone have any other specific questions right now? The link doesn't work. It sends you to an error. Okay, that's not good. I just checked it and it seemed to work on my end. So let me try again to copy it. Hyperlink. Paste. Oh, that doesn't work. That's going to use, let's do our. I don't know if that was the same link. Oh no, this is probably, yeah, that link looks more cleaned up. Yeah, try that one out, see if it works. That's the one that I'm just using that I got through my email from our National Advocates Program. So yeah, they had the VA did as well make an effort to remove the link from their other. They had another part of the external VA website that has DBQs. They've also removed it from that section as well as of recently. So with the same message stating that that they're concerned about fraud. All right, yeah, sorry if that link's not working. I was able to pull it up on here. If I don't know why it's not working. I apologize for that. Yeah, I'm able to pull it up on my computer when I put that link into. Yeah, you're gonna have to highlight and copy and paste it into your browser. But yeah, I'll share it with Matt, and we'll be able to get it out to you that way. Does anyone have any questions about the CARES Act or about anything that they're experiencing right now through COVID-19? Any questions about landlord-tenant law? I've got a few more minutes here, and I'm happy to stick around for as long as until my dog starts whining again, which hopefully I think she fell asleep. All right, so with all that being said, let me just scroll back up and double check to make sure. I had a few questions that were privately messaged to me, so I'm not going to answer those out loud. But like I said, if you want to follow up with me about any specifics, when they're, I can probably answer some of these questions just generally. So breaking a lease early due to COVID-19. So no, there currently is nothing allowing you to get out of your lease early due to loss of occupation or loss of income associated with COVID-19. However, you may be able to get an agreement with your landlord to allow you to break the lease. There's nothing that's requiring them to allow you to break your lease early. So unfortunately, a lease is, for the most part, a private contract between two individuals, and there's not a whole lot that can be done, and it's not often that the government or the courts intervene between private individuals contracting. So there's nothing really that allows. Actually, there's nothing at all that would allow you to break a lease just for the fact of losing your income or occupation. So it's tough, I understand, but like I said, the landlords are often willing to work with you. There's a lot of organizations out there that are able to help you cover your rent costs. Supportive services for veteran families is available. If you're a student and your only income is the GI Bill, you may be eligible for that program. If you have been denied in the past, they've currently expanded their eligibility requirements because of COVID-19 and because of all of the financial hardships. They're pouring money into these programs in order to help veterans to catch up on their rent. Additionally, every municipality in the county, in Broward County, is offering something, some sort of what they call SHIP funds, SHIP, to help folks get additional money to pay their rent. So I'm going to send more information out. I'll put it in the chat, but also Matt will go ahead and send a link out with more of the, or I'll send an email out with more of this information that I forward to him regarding the additional resources for veterans on how to get, how to potentially cover costs for your rent if you fall behind on your rent or behind on your mortgage, and additional resources if you need help getting food, if you need help with clothing, if you need help grocery shopping, if you need help, really, there's a lot of services out there specifically for veterans and just in general for folks who have a hardship, a specific hardship during these times. Now, my best resource I can give you over the phone, or over the Zoom conference, is a very simple 3 numbers that you can dial, and that's 211. 211 has always been a helpful resource in the community. They cannot do everything. They cannot help everybody, but they tend to be, especially during these times, they tend to be on the front lines of these crises, and they tend to be the program, tend to be able to connect with all of the service providers, all the programs that are able to provide these services. So there's actually 2 supportive services for veteran families programs. I'll mention one of them. It's Mission United. They can be reached at either by calling 211 or by calling 954-4-UNITED. So 954-4-UNITED, so 486-4833. If Mission United is unable to help you, they may send you to the other program, which is called Operation Sacred Trust, or 411 Veterans is their another name for OST. So both of those programs in Broward County are wonderful, and they're there to help. They'll give you all the resources that they can. So like I said, the link will go around with how to reach out in more depth to those programs. You'll also have my email address, which was shared in the chat. Feel free to share it with any of your friends, students, colleagues, coworkers that are veterans. And our goal here is to just help out as many people as possible during these times. I don't know when we're going to be getting back in the office, but fortunately we're able to continue operating remotely. And though it's not the most comfortable, I'd much rather be in my office with my team. I've got me and my dog here, and we're figuring out how to solve the world's problems, just her and I. So if there's anything we can do to help, if you have any questions, let me know, and always happy to help.
All right. Thank you again, James, for spending some time with us. I'll be sure to send out those emails for everybody that wanted those links. Just go ahead and give me an email now. I added my email addresses onto the chat. Reach out and I'll forward them over to you.
All right. Sounds good, Matt.
All right. Have a good one, everyone.
Thanks.